We made it, guys. Draft day is here. We're going live, Peacock and Williamson style, to break down all the latest draft morning buzz, who we're here is rise and fall, and where these prospects might go in the 2024 NFL draft, which starts tonight, right here, Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson, as always, at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. We appreciate everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And make sure you are subscribed up and hit that notification bell so you don't miss when we do go live. And it's been really fun going live the last 2 days, Matt. I think we got to do that a lot more often. So, yeah, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Hit the notification bell, the thumbs up. We love you and appreciate you for that. And, of course, you can subscribe everywhere you listen to your podcasts. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I know we all have a competitive side. I do. Matt's really competitive about Monopoly, apparently. So I got to go head to head with Williamson on Monopoly Go. It's the mobile hit game. It's a twist on the classic Monopoly. And you can join your friends and download Monopoly Go today, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Okay, the draft is going to start with quarterbacks, Matt. We know that.
Yeah.
And, I'm seeing some very strong trends, some surprising, some maybe not as surprising, that just about all of the people who are really plugged in are fully believing and on board with, as we are here now on draft morning for me. Draft afternoon is where it's hitting now for you on the East Coast there. And it starts with quarterback. We know it's Caleb Williams, number one, and really it feels now almost locked into 2 and 3 with Jaden Daniels and Drake May. Do you think there's an opportunity for that to be shaken up at all with the top 3 picks? That being also that the Patriots probably not moving out of that 3 spot, and Drake May's the guy they wanted there. Maybe if May was gone at 2, that's where we could see the Patriots trade out, and it feels like it's not going to go that way, that it's Daniels 2, Drake May 3, nobody changing draft slots in the top 3.
The only one I want to address is the Patriots. I do think it goes Williams, Daniels, of course. Now, by all accounts, Belichick, Big Bad Wolf, I mean, they make him sound out like he never did anything for the organization. And I mean, whatever.
Are they going to hide the Lombardis in a closet?
Right.
Like, display those anymore? Man, you couldn't operate anything with Bill Belichick around.
Guy didn't know anything. Anyway, it sure seems like the Crafts are more and more involved in this. And even Elliot Wolf, they never really gave him the GM title. He's just doing GM stuff. I never really realized that until the last couple of days. So it does sound like the Crafts, and Robert Kraft's son, I guess, is scheduled to take over a year from now. So this is about to be his show, are in charge. And I think that's something we need to be really relevant of, or really aware of with all these teams. Like Sean Payton's got all the power in Denver. If he wants a quarterback, he's going to get one. The owners in New England are taking their team back from Bill. And I think they're not going to leave this without a quarterback. I just don't know if it's going to be McCarthy or May.
And here's the difference. So Robert Kraft, and different owners around the NFL got into the NFL in different ways.
Sure.
So if you have a businessman who bought an NFL team and football wasn't his first business, then he might
often the case,
right?
And guys own Home Depot or Gillette or whatever, right?
He might try to implement business things. We've seen how sometimes that's very difficult, whether it's David Tepper or anybody. Sometimes that's not. It doesn't translate as well, football business to real business, as far as personnel and on-field stuff goes. The other business side of things, I'm sure, is very similar, marketing and some other things, but
I don't think you can run it like IBM. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly. Right. But if you are the son of an NFL owner and grew up in football, the football business. Mm-hmm. And you can bet if I or my family owned an NFL team, I would be the GM. Nothing would happen on draft day without me saying so. And I would probably call in the card, but that's me. And that's, football.
You have that right.
Football is my business, right?
Yeah.
And so I could see very well that if, I was Bob Kraft's son, and he's like, all right, about to turn it over to you next year, I would say, cool. It's going to run a lot more like, say, the Dallas Cowboys with ownership in charge than it is maybe some other organizations. So I can absolutely see that changing things quite a bit there in New England. And it also, like, growing up in football probably means you're a lot better at it than maybe some other owners too. So that's not a bad thing either. The Cowboys haven't run their organization poorly, even though the Jones family is the ones running the draft. In fact, they've drafted pretty well, top half of the league. You know?
Oh, yeah. One of the best.
Done a bad job with that. Before Al Davis lost his fastball, the Raiders did a great job with that and were, ahead of the times in some ways, and then kind of fell behind the times a little bit with, some of the weird picks. They were James Jett and, just all speed, just some weird stuff started to happen there with the drafts. But all that is to say that, yeah, it's a different era there in New England. But when you have the opportunity to draft a franchise quarterback, you do it. They're not moving out unless they don't like the options that are there. And it really has felt all along like Drake May was sort of their guy. And if May went, they would be willing to move out. And if May's there, they draft him. And it's and obviously there's a reason the Vikings are doing what they're doing. I think it's going to have to be pick 4 or 5 the Vikings move up to and not 3.
I tend to agree. I think that these, back to my original point, the more I get involved with teams and the older I get, the more I realize these are 32 very different entities, and they're all run very, very differently. And in a lot of ways they compete. In a lot of ways they're a conglomerate or, a monopoly go, that, all keep the league rolling as one. And they hire this commissioner to keep them all rolling as one. And the owners do that. But every team's very different. Like Tennessee's in a weird spot right now. Vrabel being gone is kind of like Belichick being gone. They're not going to do things the same way. They don't want Derrick Henry and, 350-pound guards anymore. All these teams are a lot different. I think you need to look at it through that lens tonight.
I think that's a great point, and it really ties into the Los Angeles Chargers, which is one of the ones I wanted to bring up, because people keep pointing to Jim Harbaugh and saying, man, he wants a physical team. He's going to draft an offensive lineman. It's offensive tackle or bust. I am seeing J.C. Latham in most of those insider mock drafts this morning at pick 5, not even after a trade back, because I love J.C. Latham at 11. If say they traded with the Vikings, which I still think would be my official mock draft, which I might jump on my channel later and just do a little last minute mock draft. What I think is going to happen. I Latham 5. Or Latham 11 after the Chargers move out of 5 with the Vikings is probably how I'd have it. Marvin Harrison at 4. That's what I think is the likelihood today in this thing. But and then there's been some pushback on that idea because people go back to his time with the 49ers and say, well, actually, if you look at it, they drafted a lot of wide receivers. And then I think to myself, well, it was a different structure then. It was a GM who hired Jim Harbaugh. The GM, Trent Baalke at the time, was making the picks, not Jim Harbaugh. And that's why there was a lot of fighting about stuff. Like, I guarantee you Jim Harbaugh did not want to draft A.J. Jenkins. You know what I mean?
Right.
That was
right. Good call. Yeah.
So that said, now the structure is different. There's one guy in charge, and it's Jim Harbaugh. And Ortiz, who the GM is there now, obviously is going to have a big say in things. But there's a different tip of the pyramid in all of these structures, and is it the coach or the GM is the question. And it's for sure the coach now in LA, which I think is why everyone's throwing in not only a tackle and not Joe Alt, but actually J.C. Latham. They think that's the fit. Big, run blocking, massive right tackle.
Right tackle. Yep. I agree with everything you said, because my top 5 would be the same as well. I think Minnesota will get to 5. They'll get McCarthy there. Maybe May, but I don't think so. I think May probably ends up in New England. And a lot of it's because, like we were saying before, and we've been talking about, like, Harbaugh's situation is so much different than the Jets. The Jets have like 1 year to get it right. Harbaugh's got a leash. They just gave him a ton of money in sort of a non-Chargers like way. And you are the czar of this whole thing. They could go 0-17 next year and he would still be safe. So I think if you're Harbaugh, I want to bring in as many of my guys as possible. Am I turning my back on a Neighbors or a Marvin? Yeah, that's hard to do. Or, an Alt or a Latham. But I want those 2 first-round picks from the Vikings. I want a future pick maybe. I want to bring in 12 draft picks, maybe 4 of them from Michigan, who knows? But, I want to bring in my guys, my culture with talented day 2, first round pick type guys. I don't need the star right now. I don't have to win it this year.
Thanks for the check here from Jason in the chat. James Jett, undrafted free agent, 256 receptions, 4,017 yards, 30 touchdowns. As soon as I said it, I knew it was a bad example of what I was talking about. I was just trying to think of fast guys that were Raiders, right?
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Jason. James Jett, great Raider, great undrafted free agent signing. That's fantastic stuff. All right. And appreciate everyone jumping into the chat here. We'll get into some chat questions here if we have time, but all the latest buzz, what we see happening and what we believe now is happening because of those folks who know best what are telling us is going to happen this morning about the NFL draft. More of that next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Monopoly Go, and we've all been there, right? We are competing. The game is not going great, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime. Scoreboard not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure if you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep. You lift your head up. You say to yourself, it's time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone, anytime. Tons of new twists, including leaderboards. Compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Dynamic Monopoly boards. You can use a wrecking ball and knock over the landmarks of your friends. You can also charge rent on all the iconic Monopoly properties, or you can work with your friends, crack open community chests, climb up leaderboards, win tournaments. So get back out there, put your game face on, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, and now's the time. You have not a lot of time left, a few more hours. Use some of this insight to go win some money on FanDuel with those NFL draft props. And yeah, it is playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Major League Baseball in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single one of those games. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. It's $150, win or lose. So bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks to NFL draft props, all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
So BP, I meant to ask you to start the show because I think everyone knows what I do during the draft. What's your 3-day plan? I mean, I know you'll do some Locked On Niners stuff and focus on the Niners, of course.
Like you, I have sort of leapt into my own personal YouTube channel. So everyone out there, go subscribe to youtube.com/@Williamson NFL, right? That's the handle.
Yep, that's me.
Same as your Twitter handle. Same for me. youtube.com/@BD Peacock. It's Overtime with Brian Peacock, OT with BP. I'll be streaming live during the entire first round, and then putting on Locked On 49ers post picks throughout the draft as well, and doing those things, and having a lot of fun there on the new channel. I call it Overtime because sometimes these Locked On podcasts, there's stuff that doesn't fit in here, and you want to go get a little loose and go longer, do whatever, super chats, live chats, and just have fun with not really any structure. So that's why I wanted to have a secondary and a little extra tertiary, I guess, because I've already got 2 YouTube channels with Locked On 49ers and Peacock and Williamson. So I'll be doing that. And
you do it right there from the studio, like where you're at right now?
Yeah, that's where I'm going to be. I'll be right in here for a lot of hours this weekend. Yeah, absolutely. Nice. And not, this is, okay, the #1 rule of the NFL draft, especially round 1, do not spoil the picks. I will not be on Twitter. If you are account that spoils the picks, I will mute you. I will block you. If you are a TV channel that shows the guy on the phone while he, before it's been announced and we don't know who the pick is going to be, the networks have done such a better job, Matt, of not spoiling. It used to be you knew everything.
Horrible.
You knew the first pick was already signed before the draft started. The second pick's on the phone. You knew who that was going to be. And I hated that. Don't spoil picks. Don't ruin the time for everybody else. If you're spoiling picks, you're kicked out of the live chat. Your channel is off my TV. Your account is blocked on Twitter. So that's the #1 rule for draft day. Don't spoil the picks and just have a little bit of fun as this thing goes, because it is Christmas time. You don't want to know what's in the box before you unwrap it.
Absolutely. Good stuff. So real quick, this isn't self-promotion time. I didn't mean that to, take over this, but I was just curious what you plan on doing. If you just have to feed up eating wings, hoping for your favorite Niner, or what all you were doing. If anyone's interested, you can go to Steelers.com, and I am the only one that's on every second of the draft that covers it. And that's usually my role. It is once again this year. I'll be at the facility right next to the 6 Super Bowl trophies, huge coffee machine that I hit hard, and they feed us like crazy. And if you want to go to Steelers.com or 970 local here in Pittsburgh, I will be on every second of the draft.
Make sure you get
It's a marathon, dude.
Make sure you get some water and some tea, maybe some honey in there as well with that coffee, man.
It's like 22 hours for 3.
It's long, man. It is very long. Yeah, but it's loose too, right? It's fun now. It's
7th round gets a little rough, but
I can't wait. I'm going to tune in. I want to hear those scouting reports on the 7th rounders, Matt.
That's why I'm there.
Like, who can we get that can talk about 7th rounders? Oh, Williamson. Williamson.
Yeah. And it's great this year. The Steelers don't even have a 7th round pick, so you sit around. You can't even get excited about Spencer Anderson in the 7th round.
We get this question a lot, and we're going to get more into this stuff. But Michael asked the question: my son wants to be a scout. Any particular suggestions? Yes, there is one. It's who you know. Go make friends with people in high places. Other scouts.
Don't expect to make any
get jobs.
Don't get used to having money or eating well or living in a nice place for a long time.
Seeing your family.
Volunteer every way you possibly can. Pound on doors. Be aggressive. But one advantage you guys have that I didn't was you could start your own YouTube channel. Like when I got into this stuff when I was 23 years old, that stuff didn't exist. So at least you can get on Twitter and maybe stand out some way, shape, or form. I'm not saying you want to be media, but I mean, it's at least you have a different outlet than I did.
Question here from Ryan. He says, well, maybe more of a statement at first. What a pleasure to see you. What are the chances the Steelers?
Oh, Ryan and I went to high school together. What's up, Driscoll?
Oh, nice. What do you think? Wide receiver trade? There's a lot of heat. That's one of those things that I think it was Norris.
Josh Norris from Underdog.
From fantasy. Which one of the fantasy?
He's from Underdog. Yeah, Underdog fan. Yep.
Underdog fantasy. He said something very interesting, and by the way, he's like mock draft champion, so he's really good.
He won $1 million or whatever that one year.
Yeah,
they do very good work over there.
Did he win $1 million for that?
Maybe more. He was the grand prize winner a couple years ago.
It was like worth anything other than clout. Okay, wow.
No, he was. Yeah, he was the champ. Yeah, right.
He said what he heard is that Ayuk's gone. Like that's gonna happen. And he didn't elaborate much or who he heard it from. Steelers, Niners, could there be a thing there? We don't want to spend too much time on this. We talk a lot of Steelers, Niners, but that's out there.
So I think Amon-Ra St. Brown signing yesterday of $30 million all of a sudden just says, wow, the price of tea in China has gone up, for CD Lamb, let alone Justin Jefferson, Ayuk. I mean, that's going to be the jump off point for those guys. And I don't know that Ayuk will get a ton more than St. Brown or, but Lamb will and Jefferson sure will.
And the Bengals and Steelers aren't going to work together on a T. Higgins trade.
No, right.
So it's probably Ayuk or bust if you're trading for a wide receiver if you're the Steelers.
Yeah, I was going to throw this out there, though, and this is what I've warmed up to, and it's a consolation prize, but I think Cortland Sutton is very much in play for the Steelers, and I think at his price and his age, he has 2 years left on a deal, cost you probably a 5th-round pick, and then you draft Ricky Pearsall in the 2nd round. You know what I mean? Like, that to me makes more sense for Pittsburgh.
Xavier,
and I like it quite a bit. Yeah.
Xavier Worthy, wide receiver 4. Schrager, who's another good mock drafter who is plugged in, talks to a lot of people around the NFL, has Worthy the highest now I've seen in the mock draft season, the morning of the draft, going all the way up at pick 17 with the Jacksonville Jaguars and the 4th wide receiver off the board. I've been hinting at this, and I've been telling people, look, dude ran 4.21. He's going to go higher. He's not going to go at pick 55 or whatever we're seeing in these mock drafts.
No.
17. Can we see him jump in and leapfrog the Adonai Mitchell's his teammate? And
Brian
Peacock
out there. Which Texas receiver? Which Texas receiver do you think goes first? I'm leaning towards Worthy.
Oh, it's Worthy 100%.
Yeah.
Because on the other side of things, it's the Adonai Mitchell, and I haven't seen someone plugged in putting him higher than 31, 32 in any mock draft now recently. And many times he's falling out of the first round. I think there's character stuff. There's the medical, and medical is a big part of this, Matt. If you're trying to what's the resume of someone who's going to go higher than expected in the NFL draft? Well, you were awesome in interviews. You were awesome in workouts, testing numbers. You're checking a lot of boxes.
Yep.
What's the recipe for someone to fall in the NFL draft? Bad interviews, bad reports from school about your character, and medical stuff. And so I think those happening in opposite directions for the two Texas wide receivers. Yeah, although Mitchell hit the workout stuff over the fence, a home run there. But everything else might be a little bit worrisome for some teams right now.
I've heard small little things too. You know, Brian Thomas might have a shoulder. Jackson Powers Johnson might have concussion concerns. And I don't know if those things are true. And I always hesitate to even bring them up because I don't think what you and I say are going to change their status. I don't want to hurt any young men's chances, obviously. But we know this long enough that when somebody falls to 50 that's been mocked at 25-ish, it's almost always medical. I mean, it used to be like maybe he failed the marijuana test at the combine. Now nobody cares. You know what I mean? Like
nobody cares about that anymore.
Right. That's for sure.
But that used to be the big one, right?
Right.
He got caught with a sack of weed 2 years ago, and nobody knew about it, but all the teams did, right? And,
can't have that guy on our team.
Yeah. You hit two of the names I wanted to mention. Let's get into those next. Some of the and some of the medical whispers we're hearing, which is really the biggest thing that can drop prospects down. You know, a guy's got bone on bone in his knee that you don't know about, or a neck condition, a degenerative condition that we don't know about. The team's medical found, and medical rechecks are a big part of this.
And real quick on that, and sometimes they didn't even miss time. You know, like they played great. They never missed a game. Everyone thinks they're durable, but then they're like, he's been playing with very little cartilage in his knee. You're never going to get a second contract out of him.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. You know.
Okay. More on those potential fallers and some surprises that could happen in the first round of the NFL draft next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you in part by LinkedIn Jobs. And when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality candidates and professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. And it's not just a job board. At LinkedIn. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else because over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other job sites. You might find the perfect candidate that's actually not really even actively looking. So if you're not looking at LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So you hit on two of the names that are commonly sliding now on the insider mock drafts. And it's Jackson Powers Johnson, which after the Senior Bowl, I thought, lock him in. First pure interior offensive lineman, first center off the board, lock him into the first round. He's going to have a first round grade on every team's draft boards.
Trust me. Steelers at 20. Steelers at 20s. JPJ. That's all, that's all I've heard. Right.
And, you know, he did have, I think it was just a hamstring or something, and he still played through it, you know, which I thought was even more beneficial to his stock because, he had a hamstring, but most guys that have anything, a fingernail issue, they're not showing up at the Senior Bowl. He came to the Senior Bowl, dominated for a couple days before he left and said, okay, I'm out, got the hamstring, but I showed you what I can do, and I competed through an injury. Scouts love that. Teams love that. I was like, this is the dude. He's big, but still athletic. He's not some undersized guy who's forced into center. He's a big, powerful guy who could play guard, but could be an awesome center, you know? And now there's like some concussion stuff. I've seen some interviews with him. I think he's he's kind of a character. I think it might have rubbed some teams the wrong way from what I understand. Although the interviews I saw, I just thought he was kind of funny and he's kind of, you know, lighthearted guy. Maybe teams think he's a little too off his rocker and, you know, unserious or something. I don't know, but he's very commonly falling later and later, and certainly behind Graham Barton, who's projected to be a center in the NFL. And I mean, how many centers are going to go in the first round, Matt? So I think he's absolutely a faller to look out for if we're believing what all the insiders are hearing.
Yeah. And again, I always put things in through a Steeler light, but He was mocked 1,000 times over, 20 to the Steelers. Now, on draft day, it sounds like Graham Barton could be the pick at 20 for the Steelers. Everyone's linking those guys together. But I've seen many people say JPJ could potentially get the 51 to the Steelers. And that Zach Frazier's going to go ahead of him.
Right. Yeah, not even the second center potentially.
Right.
Which is it's kind of crazy, and we'll see. But if there's real concerns, concussions, and like I remember Jay Ajayi was a big one for me. Jack was another one. Was like, these guys are awesome. How can they be falling in the draft? I was like, well, they're bone on bone. They are not going to have a long NFL career, so we're going to bypass them. And a lot of teams did. And guess what? Both guys had shorter NFL careers, even if they were really good at some point when they were on the field early in their career.
Those are great ones. And Miles Jack was just here with the Steelers too. I mean, never practiced on Wednesdays. He was like that his whole career. It's managing them.
Yeah, and you watch them on tape when they're young and they're 21 years old and they're flying around. You're like, well, how could this guy have a medical issue? But you take those internal pictures and the bones aren't going to lie to you. It's like, well, he's got a condition. So that's going to happen for some prospects. And a lot of times we don't hear about it until after the draft. And you mentioned Brian Thomas. There's a labrum injury potentially with him. And he's consistently now not in the top 15 or 20 of these late breaking mock drafts from insiders. So, and Worthy's going higher. So
it brings me back to Worthy. If Mitchell has an issue, Thomas has an issue, who's most likely to fill that gap? It's probably Worthy.
Probably the guy that ran 4.2, right? And we might also see, like, everyone loves the top 3 wide receivers. It might be a late run on wide receivers, and everyone waits after those top 3 guys at that position. That's when all these offensive lineman runs are going to happen, right? And
defensive players start coming off the board,
exactly. Another defensive riser is Byron Murphy. He's getting a lot
first
at 9 to the Chicago Bears. I know Eberflus loves to have him a mean defensive tackle on that defense. Like, that's huge for his defense. Drafted a couple guys already last year. That probably shouldn't shock people. That one also feels a little smoke screenish when they're like, we want Odunze to fall to us, so let's put something out there with another player, right? Like, I do feel like there's some of that happening as well.
I could see Murphy at 8 to Atlanta or 9 to the Bears. As a true 3 technique type. I don't think he'll last a lot longer than that, but there's also not many good landing spots for him if he doesn't go to those 2, unless there's moving around or whatever, or Minnesota can't trade out, doesn't get there. Maybe he ends up with the Vikes if they don't get their quarterback. One guy I want to throw out there, though, we were talking about receivers, is Jermaine Burton from Alabama. I know he's not going in the first round. He's been at like 4 schools in 6 years going back there. Maybe it's even like 6 in 6 years or something crazy like that.
I think what I heard was like 6 schools in 8
years.
Going
That's
back,
what it,
well
high
beyond
schools and right.
college, like well before college. And so he, like, tape wise, he would be a top 100, top 50 guy, maybe even a first round guy. Who knows? He might go undrafted though. He might go undrafted completely. I have no idea where he's going to go.
I mean, he struck a Tennessee woman on the field, a Tennessee woman fan. Like, you can find it on YouTube. Like, that's fact. So, but the more I watch him, he might be better than Worthy. I think he's right there with Mitchell and these guys. Like, I think he's one of the top 6 or 7 receivers in this class. And hey, Chiefs fans, if Burton ends up in Kansas City, he's going to be on my fantasy team. And they'll get him in like the 4th or 5th round as opposed to the 1st. Because they kind of look the other way on some of that stuff.
Andy Reid will look the other way. He will.
Yeah. So I just wanted to throw him out there. He's a really good player.
I would bet he goes undrafted, to be honest with you. Just, there's some things that can't happen. Teams don't even want the PR hit. It is not even worth it. And that's kind of one of those things when you're striking a woman, it's on video, other players have come back from pretty nasty things. So
no doubt
we'll see. And, in the end, teams are competitive and trying to win. So we'll see what happens with those kind of things.
What's your prediction on Nix and Penix?
Yeah, I want to go to the chat here real quick.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Because Jason has a question on that. He says, my Raiders need to get a tackle at 13 so they can get Penix in the 2nd round, or how high would they need to trade up in the 1st to get Penix? I'm seeing Penix and Bo Nix a lot in these 1st-round mock drafts. I don't know if I buy it, but going back to Schrader's mock, he has Nix at 12 and Penix at 13.
I don't think that's crazy. Maybe one of the two happens. But again, does Sean Payton care? I mean, I know we're going to talk Raiders here, but does Sean Payton care what the cost is? He's going to get a quarterback. I mean, I think that's almost set in stone. I don't know if the Raiders are going to get a quarterback, but I think that the buzz with them and Penix is very, very real. And Jason's right. They desperately need a right tackle amongst some other things on defense. But if you take Penix at 13, you'll find somebody suitable at right tackle in the second round. Denver doesn't have a second round pick.
And I don't know who the Raiders need to leapfrog at that point. Like
At 13, I don't think they do.
Or even in the second round. Like there's nobody who ahead of them is going to draft a quarterback, because all the teams drafting quarterbacks are going to happen already in round 1. Is there anybody at the top of the second round that even need to come up?
Giants, maybe.
They don't need to go up all the way to the first round, probably. So this might be more of a, and if I had to guess, it'd probably be more of a Levis situation where you wait and you reshuffle the board overnight and you get up into, the second round, a few picks. I don't think you need to go all the way up into round 1 again to get Penix or Nix. I don't think so. And to be honest with you, these teams are like, they value their picks. They're not just throwing around picks willy-nilly. And I like Penix. I wouldn't do it at 13, and I definitely wouldn't do Bo Nix at 12 either. Maybe go down would be the move.
Right. Someone comes up for a tackle or Bowers or somebody like that, maybe. I don't know. I don't have a great feel for this, because this time last year I thought Levis was going to go around 12 or 13 or 10 or whatever too, Another
one. Speaking of going down, I've seen a couple of other of these mock drafts that have the Eagles going up with the Denver Broncos, and then Bo Nix goes at pick 22, and the Eagles go up at whatever their cornerback or an offensive tackle or whatever.
Yeah, Denver's so crazy. I keep bringing them up because Sean Payton's totally in charge, and they don't have a second round pick. Like, to me, that's a great move for Denver if you're going to do it. Go to 22, whatever. Make a huge deal with the Bills if a receiver falls, whatever. Get second round picks, get future picks. You're not winning anything this year, no matter who your quarterback is, that are possible. So get a lot of stuff. But I've also heard some people say Sean Payton might just adore JJ McCarthy, and he's going to trade Surtain and 12 and go get him,
Right. And that's the other thing. So if the Vikings aren't able to go up into the top 3, I think things get really interesting, because, once you start talking about pick 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, and if those are the spots that teams are trading up for a quarterback, that opens it wide up for the Raiders or the Denver Broncos to get in there too.
Without question. They could give you other stuff, future picks, Surtain.
A couple of more notes of just some trends I'm seeing. One is Tyler Guyton might go higher for sure than I have him.
Too.
Yeah, he's going top 25 in almost every mock draft from the insiders I'm seeing this morning. So that's one to look out for.
I think that's a cause of just all the tackles are going to go high.
And he's kind of the next one up. So
him and Mims are right outside the next 5. I mean, like, they're 6 and 7, I think. So they're all getting pushed up. Yeah.
Latu, speaking of neck injuries, I don't know what the imaging showed with him, and that's going to be huge. He could be the first defensive player off the board. He could fall out of the first round if his neck is not checking out for teams, and who knows, maybe different teams view him differently with that. But that's one that's just an X factor, and we don't know what those medical reports look like on Latu, who had to quit football for a while, but has come back from it, and apparently other players have come back from the same neck surgery that he's had. So
I don't know much on that, but I don't know if you noticed in the McGinn thing about that, there was a couple quotes about him that Latu has changed how he plays. He keeps his head out of the action a lot more since the neck surgeries, I guess, and as a result, he hip drop tackles a lot because he doesn't drive through his opponent. And it's minor things, but I found it interesting that was in there,
Ted, by the way, hates Guyton to the Steelers idea. Might have to start getting used to it if we're believing the insiders.
I've seen him and Barton are the 2 at 20. I've seen over and over lately,
One more potential slider, and apparently there's a medical recheck going on with Troy Fautanu out of Washington.
Oh, really?
Which could be something that makes him slide, and I'm seeing him more in the 20s than in the teens than I did a few days ago. So another one to look out for, potential slider, which is
interesting.
And he's kind of a guy that could fit for every team, but he's also got a body type that maybe doesn't fit for every team. So he's versatile, but might only fit for a few teams, because for example, a team might say, well, I want a 6'7" tackle, not a 6'3.5" tackle. Yeah. Right. So maybe that's why Guyton would potentially go over someone like Fautanu. And I think everyone thinks Fautanu is a better football player, but how do you view him and where do you put him is the question.
His tape might be better than Alt's. I mean, I think it's as good as any offensive lineman in this class.
There we go. That's what we're hearing. Yeah. Thanks everybody for
much
jumping
different
in.
show tomorrow to talk about.
Oh yeah, much different. Everything that happens in the first round will be very difficult to cover in one podcast, but we will attempt to do so on Friday's edition of Peacock and Williamson. Thanks everybody for being subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Matt and I back tomorrow. Peacock and Williamson.